talk to us, David, while you have the floor, about Minneapolis, about your overview of where you think the process stands, what needs to be reformed, what doesn't need to be reformed, and the prospects for any kind of change happening.
The process is a little complicated and needs to be followed step by step. We have adopted the Ohio plan on the Republican Rules Committee. However, in Minneapolis, at the next meeting of the Republican National Committee Rules Committee, it can be amended. Let us assume that it comes out in essentially the same state that Bob has described. At that point, it goes to the floor of the entire Republican National Committee, 165 members, and must be adopted by the National Committee before it then goes to the convention. At each of these steps, amendment is possible. So it remains for Bob and his allies to see that they can get something that looks pretty much like the Ohio plan through to the convention. I believe that, I don't know whether it's 50-50, 45-55. All I know is that with Bob's effort and conversations with Jim and the Secretaries of State, I believe that we are closer in June of 2008 to getting some kind of meaningful reform than we have ever been before. Can I guarantee it? Positively not. But we've done a lot of the work. There have been conversations between the two committees, and we are getting closer. We're closing in on it.
And in your mind, what is the goal of overall reform? Is it, some spoke of order. Is it, some think that the goal should be that every state feels equal and is treated well and leaves at the end of the day feeling better than when they came into the room or something like that? Obviously, on the Democratic side, there was a huge registration, voter turnout, and enthusiasm, which is another goal. What do you think should be the overriding?
I think what we're looking at is putting in place rules that make what is going to happen in terms of when it happens and what it is that happens predictable for candidates, predictable for campaigns, predictable for voters, predictable for secretaries of state and election commissioners, so that we don't get to November of the year before and not know when New Hampshire's going to hold its primary or when Iowa's going to hold its caucus. So orderliness and predictability are definitely part of it. So is making certain that it doesn't start too soon. And I think, I don't know whether Jim will agree with me or not, but I think, and trying to see that it doesn't go too long either.
I agree, and I think, and let me point out that I speak really only for myself here, but I've tried to express both here and in the conversations that my co-chair of Rules and Bylaws, Secretary Alexis Herman, and I have had with David and folks from the RNC, tried to express what we think are some prevailing views among the, not just the Rules Committee, but the DNC in general. I do think that it's important that we have order. Now, for Democrats, order is not always the highest value. Enthusiasm, involvement, and even confrontation about ideas sometimes takes precedence in Democratic Party
I said
processes.
orderliness, not order.
But I think there's a pretty strong feeling that, as you pointed out, Ron, the campaign really started well in the previous year in actual campaigning. But in terms of formal processes, by having formal events at the beginning of January, virtually in the holiday season, you invite things. There's a sort of no natural beginning at the beginning of the election year. You invite it to start early in the previous year. So moving it farther into the actual presidential election year, I think has value. We've tried in the past to get to this. This amendment process that David spoke about has come into play at times in the past to keep that from happening. So I think that's a value. As far as going on too long, I actually think that on the Democratic side, we think the length of the primary, where the states that were in May and June felt that they had the chance to be heard, did have a great value.
Which brought up a good point, because I can remember dealing with this after the Iowa caucus, and a few days before New Hampshire, taking calls from media outlets and saying that, and it looked like Obama was going to win New Hampshire by a wide margin there for a while, saying that this is about it for the media here. How are you going to justify Iowa, New Hampshire again setting out this winner? And then lo and behold, it doesn't happen on the Democratic side there. And then I can several months later taking calls. Is this process ever going to end? We got to make a determination here. Do you want the process to begin and end, and do you want everybody to participate?
Depends on who your candidate is and how they're doing.
We've seen a phenomenon this year that you're not going to see. In first place, I was thinking back, 1968. Is that the last time we had a non-presidential candidate on both sides of both parties running for office? That's not going to happen in 2012. Somebody's going to be president of the United States, whether it be a Democrat or a Republican.
No incumbent or quasi-incumbent on either side.
Right.
And then you dealt with the Obama, on the Democratic side, you dealt with the Obama-Clinton factor that in Iowa, we had no idea those numbers were going to be what they were. And even with the January 3rd caucus date, record numbers of independents, Republicans coming over to that caucus that night to participate in that process. I don't think that's going to be something you're going to see in 2012. But it's still a process that we need to get order to.
Well, I think
Let me
that's
ask-
a good thing to bring up, though, is because the phenomena of the Clinton-Obama campaign, I think, was unusual in the sense that two things happened in this election. Number one, with the growth and the use of the internet. I mean, there's no question about it by Senator Obama certainly set new standards on that. But the second thing was, remember, voter registration and voter turnout is geared towards competitiveness of the election, whether it's in November or whether it's in a primary. In 2000, we had a pretty good primary between Senator McCain and President Bush at that time. We had the largest turnout in Ohio's history on the Republican side. We had a low turnout this time because it was perceived by the voters to be over. Now, that's not true on the Democrat side. You had the Clinton and Obama factor on March 4th in Ohio, record turnout for the Democrats. So the competitiveness of the race is what drives the turnout, and that started in New Hampshire and Iowa with the retail politics, but you have to have the internet.